we are going to talk about homeostasis and the two different feedback mechanisms, which is positive and negative feedbacks. So negative feedback is when you have one thing either changing when it rises or changing as it falls, and then having the response be opposite of that. So if it's rising, then it'll fall in response. If it's going down, it'll rise in response. And positive feedback is when it either both stimulus and response rise together or they go down together. So first, negative feedback is rise in blood sugar levels.
An example of negative feedback would be the rise in blood sugar level. The stimulus would be the increase in blood sugar level. The control center is the brain, which analyzes the blood sugar level, and the effector is the pancreas, which produces insulin. The response is the blood sugar level goes down and goes back to the set point.
And then the other example of negative feedback that we have is when you get a fever. So, I can hold that. Okay. So, when you get a fever, the stimulus of it is when your body temperature increases, and it'll increase to about 100 or higher. And the receptor of that would be your body sensing the increase in temperature throughout your body. So then it gets sent to the control center, where your brain analyzes the difference in temperature from the set point temperature of your body, and then it'll be sent to the effector, where the effector will make your sweat glands start to produce sweat in order to cool off the body. So then the response to everything is that your body temperature will decrease back to the set point of 98.7 degrees or 37 degrees Celsius. And then, picture right here, you have increase in body temperature and decrease. So it's going up and then going down, having it being opposite. Then second, we have two positive feedbacks, and the first example is blood clotting.
An example of positive feedback would be blood clotting. The stimulus would be broken skin with blood pouring out. The receptor will be the skin gets platelets to start a clot. The brain is the control center, which analyzes the cut to react to the bleeding. The effector are the glands, which release platelets to clot the cut. The response is that the platelets clot and stops the bleeding.
And then the last positive feedback that we have is when you're giving birth and the production of oxytocin. So the stimulus is when you have your contractions when you're first starting to give birth, and then the receptor is when the oxytocin starts forming in the uterus in order to contract the muscles. And then the control center, your brain analyzes the amount of oxytocin that's already there and decides whether or not it should be increased or decreased. And because it's positive, it's going to be increased, which is in the effector. So the oxytocin is increased and more of it's produced as the hormone to be sent to the uterus. So in response, the oxytocin builds and builds and builds until finally the baby is out. And then the oxytocin levels stop because the uterus does not need to contract anymore. So those are the 4 examples, 2 being positive and 2 being negative feedbacks of homeostasis.